Do you love the 90s? Do you even remember the 90s? If not, that's totally fine. Windjammers 2 is here for you either way. This hyper-vibrant sports game presents a sleek, sexy look at the most extreme decade. Sort of. Mostly you get a vertical slice of the flying disc phenomenon. If you find yourself pining for those wraparound shades, blistering neon tank tops, and extreme font choices, then you're in good hands. Furthermore, this is the platonic ideal of disc-based sports. From the aesthetic to the execution, Windjammers 2 is the purest form of this simple idea. Also, it's really fun. My first few matches were brutal. It turns out there's a huge difference between catching discs and returning them. In particular, the second option comes with its own built-up momentum that you can't get otherwise. That's a big deal. Storing and spending your energy is a massive part of the process that you need a fair bit of practice to untangle. Once you get into that rhythm, however, a tiny path forward opens up for you. Before long, you're catching and chucking discs like there's no tomorrow. The other essential element you need to master is player style. The fine art of flinging discs. Every character is balanced between power and speed. Where you need the scales to rest is entirely up to you. I found speed pretty much essential for surviving any given match. How else do you get around the arena fast enough? Some of those specials are impossible to catch, otherwise. Although a high power rating is great too. Some of the beefier characters can hit so hard they shove both disc and defender into the goal, which truly never gets old. Of course, power players are forced to dash more or less everywhere, which puts a lot of pressure on the controls. All of the colorful characters you can select from have different stats and special moves you can use during a match. Everyone seems to be balanced and no one has a major advantage over another. Controls are just as solid as the original game, with a simple-to-master setup for pulling off some great moves and catches. While everything is set up nicely, this game is no pushover. Playing the arcade mode, I started on the hardest difficulty, due to my time with the original game, and let me tell you, this was a mistake. The AI is way different when compared to the original and can actually learn from its own mistakes, it seems. I was forced to move to the easy difficulty to even manage to score a goal in most matches until I beat a few opponents and practiced a bit. As I progressed, I got better, but I still cannot play on the hardest setting as the opponents are very unforgiving. Nothing is unfair, however, as you have every move at your disposal as your opponent is, you just have to keep trying. Thankfully, you will want to keep playing even after losing your 20th match. There is online play here, and while I did not manage to find many opponents during my playtime, the connection was smooth and fluid. Whether you are playing against the AI, online or with a friend locally, you will have a blast here. Visually, everything has been overhauled when compared to the original game. As stated before, the animation of the characters, the special moves, and even the spectators are drawn to perfection. Dotemu accomplished this without changing the core gameplay in any way, which is fantastic. This really feels like a true sequel that Data East themselves would have made years ago. They have really done their homework here. Windjammers 2 is what a sequel should be. Updated visuals, added bonus games, and new characters, all without ruining the core gameplay. As I have said, Dotemu did a remarkable job with this release, just as they have with their previous classic sequel efforts. If you're a fan of the original Neo Geo game, or if you want a fun game with a lot of challenge, look no further than Windjammers 2. We may actually have a contender for 2022 Game of the Year on our hands. I cannot recommend this game enough to every gamer out there. It is truly a super fun time. However, to its credit for being a tough to learn, tough to master game. Windjammers 2 plays mostly as smooth as silk. Matches are fast, and you'd better be on your toes at any time with a dodge or counter if you want to properly return a volley for the score. The Nintendo Switch mostly ran all of the matches I played with absolutely fluidity in handheld and docked mode. There were a few notable instances where there was some stutter in the game in docked. But these were brief and uncommon. That said, if you want to learn Windjammers 2 as a newcomer, you're likely better off getting a buddy or spending time with a customizable CPU in Versus. Fortunately, that's where good Versus options and excellent netcode come into play if you followed the development cycle of Windjammers 2. Then you may know full well that the game was delayed specifically so they could build a rollback netcode system for it. Back in 2021, I had a chance to test that rollback system in play and found it to be pretty satisfactory, and the same can be said here, if not more confidently. During my test matches online, I ran into pings that were running 100 to 200 meters per second. Rarely did I ever notice an effect on gameplay in comparison to offline play. Even with the small issues, it was never substantial enough to ruin a match. Windjammers 2 also offers a great array of options for Versus play online and off. Ranked rules are static for obvious reasons, but in player matches both local and online, you can set the time, the points to win a set, and the number of sets to win a match. In offline local, you can even play the CPU and set their level of difficulty. I kind of wish Windjammers 2 had a proper training mode where I can lab and test out different things at my pace. But I can deny that having that offline CPU Versus option is helpful for building knowledge of characters, courts, and strategies at your leisure. Really, the big draw here is the multiplayer. Big surprise, right? Since a match doesn't take long at all, sitting down and tossing discs back and forth with a friend is where I feel this will see the most traction. I'm happy to see that people are starting to warm up to the concept of couch multiplayer again, and I'm not surprised that Dotemu didn't forget either. While the game is coming to every modern platform available, I feel that Switch owners will get a hell of a lot of traction based on the hybrid nature of the console. The controls are tight and simple, and tossing a Joy-Con to a buddy to squeeze in a match or two in the right circumstances has some serious spontaneity value. Online play is also included here, but wasn't available at the time of review. Hopefully, it should come out decently enough. But I'm happy they didn't forget the people who enjoy competing with others online.